Greetings and welcome to another edition of What's Hot with Tranquility. My name is Pete Pardo, publisher and CEO of SOT. Today is Saturday, November the 18th. We are here in the home of Lion Music recording artist, guitarist, and composer Jim Ledford. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me here. So we've actually been talking to Jim for a while, and we were actually just waiting for the release of his new album, Hot Legato, on Lion, to actually have him on the show to talk about the new release and some of the other cool things that are going on with him. So Jim, thanks for having me again, and we really appreciate this. So the new album is out. It's kind of been a little while in the works, but I know you've been kind of busy on the music scene for quite a long time.
Yes.
So before we kind of get into talking about how we actually met,
Mm-hmm.
Jim and I know each other for a few years, but actually today is the first day we've met in person. Okay, that's another thing that was a long time coming. But Jim's been kind of busy on the music scene on and off for quite a number of years. And he's, like me, also a fellow New Yorker, although now living in Pennsylvania. So Jim, tell our readers a little bit about kind of how you got started in music, where you're from originally, and kind of how we got to here in 2017 with Lion Music.
Yeah, definitely. I started out back in the late 70s, wishing and hoping that I could be a guitar player. And that was due to watching a friend of mine. His name was Frank Blackman. He was a startup guitar player, self-startup guitar player, and he started with a bunch of local bands back in Highland Falls, which is my hometown. Right. And so I just got this drive in me when I was very young to get something going with guitar. I mean, I was just mesmerized by the whole solo thing. So I begged my mom for a couple of years after having a few piece of junk guitars, and
didn't we all? Right?
And, yes, yeah. And I begged and scratched at that, and then one year for Christmas, lo and behold, she goes to the music shed in Caldors in Vales Gate, which used to be in the old Caldors Plaza,
remember it well.
Run by Mr. Leo, right?
Mm-hmm.
So up on the wall was this gorgeous wine red 1979 Vantage Les Paul made in Japan, which now, if you have one, is worth a lot of money. I wish I still had mine. But it was just a beautiful guitar, and it was nothing less than a Gibson Les Paul. It was all mahogany, came with DiMarzio pickups. I mean, it was just a dream guitar off the rack. And so I kept staring at that for a long time. And, that Christmas under the tree,
voila,
there was a case that said Vantage on it, and they said, it can't be that.
That was the best Christmas ever.
It was the greatest
the Ledford
Christmas.
household. Exactly.
It was the greatest Christmas, and then I opened it up, and there it was, the wine red Les Paul, and I just remember I got this overwhelming sensation of this is it, and that's really where it started. You know what I mean? Like that's where that real kick drive started. There were other drives in the past, like when I first saw Ace Frehley play solos.
I was just going to ask you, what was that moment that you said that you watched another guitar player and you said, I want to do that too?
It would have to be Ace Frehley. Like Kiss Alive 2, that whole groove. Well, when that all came out, and at that time, dating myself, of course, but the white and black 8-track set, the double live set, that was it for me. I mean, just absolutely caught my attention with the obvious, which was the song "Shock Me" when he does his smoking guitar solo, and I said, I'm doing that. I'm doing that. So that's really what got me driving, man, And then after that, is when I started seeing my local buddy there, Frank Blackman and his bands and everything. And so I started hanging around with him a little bit more, getting some tips, and he gave me a few lessons, and then we ended up playing in a few bands together as well when I was younger, and it just really trickled on from there, man. I got a few lucky spots, I call it, back in the 1980s. I opened up for Foghat and Three Dog Night. That was an accidental opening, which turned out to be a good positive thing because we were asked to play the Rockland County Fair, and Foghat and Three Dog Night were playing there. And they were running late that night, so their sound man was in a hurry to get things going. And what happened was he said, don't bring any of your stuff out of your cars except for your guitars and your drumsticks, please. And that was a good thing for us because we got to have Foghat's sound man do our sound for us that night, and we just sounded ballistic. I mean, it was loud and ballistic, and it was just another one of those ramping points in your career where,
right place at the right time.
This is it, man. Yeah. So we stayed in touch on and off with like Foghat and for a little while after that, but nothing transpired. Beyond that, as far as that goes, we got a few more smaller warm up spots through them, but they were on their worldwide tour at that time, so that's kind of where that drifted off. And And then I landed this band, Tantrum, okay? And that was a local Orange County, bunch of guys from Orange County, and a drummer was in my hometown as well. And we started writing our own tunes, and that went very well. I mean, that was for me. I was kind of the studio guy without having a studio. What I did have was a dual cassette deck, and I was short order cooking for Benny Haven's Pub in Highland Falls at that time. And in the kitchen, I'm running dubs off on our CDs, on our cassettes. And we were selling them at our shows. And that's where we started making money.
Because everything was done on the cheap back then.
It was.
Most of you might remember, the early, mid-'80s, that the whole tape trading thing was happening.
Oh, yeah.
When you heard new bands, I mean, a lot of the bands that became huge later on that decade started out like Metallica and all these bands. That's how people first started hearing about them. It's like you get a tape, maybe a compilation tape or whatever. There's all, and especially here in Orange County, all the Orange County and the Hudson Valley bands were just passing around tapes at shows. That's all you did.
Right.
So
exactly.
Way different than today. Yeah. Really different than today.
So we spent our big, how that got kicking was we spent our walloping $200 savings at that time, which is our entire band had in our little account. And we went in and we paid somebody to do we did a live demo recording for our first EP. And that was for the cassettes. It sold, excuse me. And that's what we ended up selling at shows. And we did that for a while. And then the live scene started to trickle out a little bit. I think we ended off up around Augie's Checkered Flag up in Kingston.
Checkered Flag.
Yep, we used to do the triple decker band in front of the band. Yep, till 3 o'clock in the morning up there. And yeah. So, that was it for a while. And then things kind of faded a little bit on the music scene, which is what got me into recording more. Because live kind of took a drift. And I wasn't willing to take a drift because I felt like I'm moving forward here and I don't want to go backward. So I invested in a few low-end pieces of home recording gear. And the rest is all history as far as that goes because I just kept ramping up with the times as far as recording equipment and stuff like that, And I've never had like a full, flat out, blown up studio or anything like that because I've just kept to the necessity and, whatever it was to make recordings happen. I've done some sessions for people over the years and I've done it all right out of my own.
But you've heard that a lot over the last decade or two, whereas, musicians who have spent and invested a lot of money in all the studio gear.
Yeah.
You really don't need all that nowadays.
No.
With all the technology that you can do online and whatnot, it's really down. You hear about people downsizing all the time.
Absolutely.
There's none more applicable to this, and it's kind of a sad story. A couple of years ago, right before Alan Holdsworth died, you read all these stories and watched interviews with him where he talked about, because Holdsworth used to have this amazing studio in his house, and he literally had to sell all that stuff.
Yeah.
But he was still able to make music, because he found that over the course of the years that he really didn't need all that stuff anymore.
Right.
And but unfortunately for him, to survive, because that's the music business, folks. You're not. It's very few that make a lot of money in the music business, and this is Alan Holdsworth, legendary guitar player, had to sell a lot of his equipment just to get by, pay the bills.
Definitely.
But it didn't stop him. So what Jim's point is true here. It's like you can still make really good creative music that sounds damn good with a lot less equipment that you did in the old days.
Absolutely. I joked with Pete before he came out here when we spoke about a month ago. And I said, when you walk into my music room, you're going to probably wonder, where is it? Other than the obvious guitars or amps that are here. But, where is it? And I just showed him right now, as a matter of fact. It's about this big. And that's it. I sized way down to a very tiny Mac that's fully loaded. And I don't need anything else beyond that. I mean, it's everything is in there. And it's given me zero problems. I ramped up into a better sound card. And, and that's it. That's the only external investment that I've made, and that was a few $100 on the side of that. So
does the trick.
I've did the entire Red Hot Legato album from where we're sitting right now. Mm-hmm. That's it.
You never know, right?
You would never know. You would never know.
No. So let's fast forward a bunch of years. So, what year would this have been? 5 years ago? 4 years ago? 5 years ago? Maybe 6 years ago.
2012-ish.
It was 2012, so 5 years ago. So I'm living in Newburgh, New York, right? I've got a neighbor, a friend of mine. His name is Brad. And he comes to me one day and he says, "Hey, listen, he goes, you do this music thing, you review music and all this stuff. I said, yeah, because I'd only been living there a couple of years, we're still getting to know each other. And he goes, you know what? I kind of grew up with this guy back in Highland Falls, who's a really great guitar player, and I talked to him recently. I think he's got a new EP or something out. Would you mind if he sent you his CD, and would you review it on the website? And I was like, sure. So did we hook up on Facebook then? I don't even remember or was it email? I don't even remember.
The original connect was email.
Okay, yep. So Jim and I started talking, and I gave him my address. He sent me a CD, and I liked it a lot, and I reviewed it. Got a lot of response, and Jim started putting that, then we connected on Facebook, and Jim started sending out the link to people, and people were interested, and that's kind of how it all started. And Jim and I kind of kept in touch, through social media and whatnot for a number of years, until about a year and a half ago, where we started conversing a little more regularly. Mm-hmm. And, well, Jim, I'll let you tell the story. So you came to me one day.
Yeah. And then fast forward even from that point, we'd be going into late winter this year. Mm-hmm. I just, on a whim one day, and I was sitting right here, as a matter of fact, and I'm saying to myself,
self.
Yeah, self. What? Is this it? Have you maxed out or what? And I said, no, you haven't yet, because I had other things in my mind. So I said, let me send a message to my buddy Pete and just ask him if there's any record labels out there or anything that are possibly looking, indie or whatever, anybody looking to bring anybody on board, which I know is kind of a dying breed as far as bringing anybody new on board. So I knew what I was up against ahead of time, but I figured I'd ask the question anyway because Pete, he knows a lot of people and he's been in the business a very long time, and I respect him and I respect anything that he would possibly have tossed my way. So by the time I got to my day gig, I had probably 9 emails, I think it was, introduction emails to record labels. And it was Pete introducing me to all these different labels from all over the place. And within the course of about 15 minutes, this is our running joke that we were just talking about, I think I was ready to sell all my equipment and buy the greatest fishing pole under the sun, and that was it. And everything was very negative, and I almost expected.
Welcome to the state of record labels in 2016, right?
Where it's at, It's and as I said, I was expecting it, so it was no super shock. It was just it was still a kick, you know what I mean? So I kind of took it to heart that day, and I said, wow,
But in my mind,
I kind of, I don't know, I was still wishing and hoping, and I let it go that day. But I woke up to another email the next morning, and it was from Lion Music. And it was from Lars Erik Mattsson in Finland. And he says, should have, not responded to something like that quick and, to that nature. And after reviewing some things or whatever it was, he said, I figure, I better get back in touch. And I was just talking to Pete about this over our dinner. And, he said, so I'm prepared to make you this offer if you want to work together. And the offer was for a 5-year record contract with Lion and some additional projects with that as well, going down the road. And there were different options, to come in with Lion. And so, lo and behold, 5 hours later, Lars and I had signed our contract over the internet together. And the rest is becoming now history, I hope.
And this all happened within a very short time period.
Yeah.
And let me make this very clear. My first choice, I knew it right after I had my first conversation with Jim, and I actually stopped to think about which labels, because I knew Jim's music, and I said, what would be the best fit for him? Lion Music was always my number one choice. Mm-hmm. That, in my heart, I felt that is the place for him to go. But that's... The more I thought about it, and we just talked about this right before we went on air here, is that traditionally, historically, Jim's musical style may not have always been a perfect fit for what the music that Lion Music always put out. Mm-hmm. So many of you who are familiar with Lion Music, over the course of the last couple of decades, very big label when it came to kind of neoclassical guitar, instrumental guitar albums. But in recent years, again, this is another reason why I thought it was a good fit, is that Lars and company were actually starting to go in different directions to more band and song-centered acts as well as maybe some guitar players who weren't all about the neoclassical kind of Yngwie shredding type of thing. So in my mind, I'm thinking, if Lars and company are really looking to kind of branch out a little bit, who better than someone like Jim and his talents, who, Jim can do that, but that's not where Jim comes from here, right? Jim has got a lot of other things that he wants to accomplish with his music, and his sense of melody and phrasing and things like that are a little bit different. And I thought, this could really work. This could really work for Lion. There were other labels that I thought, might have been a good fit. I'm not going to get into who they were, but for various reasons, it didn't work out. But Lion was my number one choice. And I think, once Lars really had a chance to kind of stop, because I also forwarded all these labels some links to Jim's music, as well as to the review I've given of his CD, of the EP. I think, once Lars heard that, he also was thinking, this is probably a direction we want to go in. And I think this is the guy. So from there, it's history. So now here, again, fast forward once again to October 26th. That was the debut and the release of Red Hot Legato.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard it, go out and do so. Purchase a digital copy, go out and check it out, read my review on the website. But it's a really great collection of songs, and they are songs. They're not just excuses for, musical explorations that have some great melodies, some really tasty guitar work. A couple tunes are kind of heavy. Influences me. If you read my review, I hear a little Satriani. I hear a little maybe Jeff Beck, maybe a little bit of Jimmy Page, I hear some Ryan Montrose, more so from the kind of legato style, anything else. But, very original guitar playing. And that's kind of, I guess, where I'm at these days. That's what I like to hear out of artists that I check out and experience. And so a lot of good songs on the album. Maybe talk about a few of them. Kind of some wacky song titles. And, with instrumental music, sometimes you always want to hear, what was the inspiration behind this song and the song title? Because, you listen to an instrumental song, could be called whatever, and you're like, all right, well, where'd they get that title from? So,
right. Wackiest one would have to be the alien cat thing, because we have a black cat, and sometimes she'll muddle into the studio here. It's rare because she doesn't like the loud music, but sometimes she'll muddle on into here. And it happened to be the day where I started writing that particular song, the melody lines. And I look over at her, and she's pure black, and she's got these really green, cool eyes. And as I look over at her, as I start playing, her head goes completely upside down, and she's watching me play upside down. So it just reminded me, and her face has an appearance of like an alien. She has that look, and when it is normal, side up. So for her to be upside down, it was completely freaky and totally alien. So she became the alien cat thing.
There you go. See, there is a story.
There is a story behind that. That's right.
Yep.
And then the Mercury Opera would be another one, which happens to be one of my personal favorites on the album.
That's a good one.
It's a culmination of probably 3 songs, I'm going to say, which is what I was thinking as it came together. It also has a super fantastic bass player on it, Mr. Domenico Citroniti, all the way from Brescia, Italy. Him and I have been tracking together for some years, and I'm always happy to have him on board, and it's a pleasure to hear his bass work. But that song, I gave it the name Mercury Opera because it's a series of songs in one. If you listen to it, and it's kind of operatic. As far as if you were to go see an opera, it's kind of a combination, an opera of scenes and scenes and movements to get to the end. So for me, you'll notice that there's a revisitation in there on one solo section, which is kind of jazzy, which is like a jazz run that goes up. And then it returns at the very end of the song, just to give you a clue. Then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's at the very end. But it's just that's how that got its name. I just kept hearing opera in my head, and then Mercury is a little bit dangerous, obviously, and it can be very dangerous. So I wanted it to be called the Mercury Opera because I just thought it was a dangerous kind of an opera. Okay, that's what I'm hearing. It can be aggressive, and there's some good crunch going on in there. And there's some good smooth going on in there. So to me, it was just an opera of a lot of things. And Mercury just put the edge on it. So that's where that ended up. Another one I'll touch base on is Blood Red Mirror. That was the first song that I wrote for this album. it actually sent Pete a quick copy of this. One morning when I woke up, I was in here, and I just sat down.
What were my first words? Man, that's heavy.
Yeah, exactly. The message came right back. Man, that's heavy. Yeah, yep. So that song to me, that rhythm came very easy when I sat down here for that first day to say, okay, now you're signed on with this record label. Let's start kicking a little ass here and put it together, right? That came to me in about 10 seconds flat, and I couldn't wait to spend the other 30 seconds transferring it over to an MP3 to send it to him. Because I said, he's not going to believe this, because I couldn't believe how fast things were coming on this album. And it did happen fast. I mean, for me, some things were coming out of the sky. You know, like, it's what it appeared. It appeared like it was just falling out of the sky. Every time I'd sit down here to record, it started to not become so difficult to create. And any musician and guitar player knows it's writing. It can be real difficult, especially when you're doing this without vocals the way I do. I create my vocal lines with my melody lines. You know, it's just how I write. And no offense to any vocalists at all, of course, but it is how I create my music. You know, that takes the place of a verse and a vocal line.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes you need something positive happening, especially if you're a musician or a writer.
Yeah.
Something positive happening in your life to kind of give you that muse and that inspiration. So,
yes.
All of a sudden you sign by line
Yeah,
music.
that
You
was
got to
huge.
put an album out, which you had already kind of started, but that's the inspiration you needed to kind of jumpstart everything. Right?
Yeah, it was the total inspiration. I absolutely, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank Lars enough for taking a chance on me. If you go on their website today, it'll still say, please do not send your promo packages because we are not accepting artists right now. It said that the day that I did it. And, you know, so everything fell in place for a reason, I think. And yes, it is what kicked my ass into the incentive mode. And, you know, when you get signed to a label after all these years, I've been signed to a few smaller labels in the past. And you know what? It's not the same vibe. It's, you know, nothing against any of those labels. Just, it's not the same vibe until you're getting yourself into a certain category with other players. And you're looking around at these other players and you're listening and you're saying, holy shit, you know, I got some work to do. You know what I mean? I got some work to do in the back of your mind. So I think that's what created that work and made it so easy was I knew that I had to put this into high gear. And so I'd come in here, I'd sit down every morning and it was coming to me like this. I mean, like this, you know? So the whole thing took me 3 months and that was for 6 new songs. I was going to do 11 songs on the new album. I pulled one back at the end because I didn't necessarily, it's not that it wouldn't have fit totally, it's just that I didn't want to seem like I was throwing in a filler, you know, because the way I write, and I've explained this to Pete in the past, is not just the, you know, the non-vocal thing, it's I write every song on my albums to hopefully be a hit, and I word it that way, to hopefully become a hit. That way, you're always putting your best out on every single thing that you're writing.
That's right.
You know, and you're not half-stepping and just, oh, I need a time filler there, or, you know, it's not about that with me. It's about, listen, create a 10-song album, all right?
Where all of them are memorable.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. Everyone has a hook in it. Everyone has that hook in it where, you know, that could do something there. It could do something there. It's probably going to do something there, but it's got a hook somewhere. So that's the way I write. I mean, I you know, and the other thing is someone just talked to me about this the other day about recording solos. They asked me how many times I dub and this and that, and I wanted to get into this today. I thought it was a cool little piece. Just so everybody knows, I do not dub anything unless there's a harmony line going on, which I did on Blood Red Mirror. Blood Red Mirror has harmony lines all throughout it. That's the only time that you'll hear me doing any multi-tracking as far as pieces. In other words, Jim doesn't punch in. And I have a philosophy behind that, which people call me a jackass for because it's a little crazy. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer in that. I believe that if you're recording something and you just wrote something and you record that solo, okay, on stage, are you going to have a punch-in button? Absolutely not.
That's right.
Absolutely not. So you don't know how many times I've hit the record button, but never a punch button, because I'll get it right and I'll play it all the way through. So people are like, oh yeah, it sounds like you tripped over here and did it. I didn't trip over anything. Everything is clean, solo, straight through. And I believe in just playing a song straight out, just as if I were standing there playing a show. Because you never know when you're going to get that phone call from somebody saying, "You ready to take that out next week?"
Yeah, get a band together. We've got some gigs for you.
And if that comes out, are you going to say, "Oh, now I got to figure all this out together"?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to put that out there because I know a lot of people like using the punch button, and it works, for people. It's just that for me, I guess I go the hard route. Is what you want to, the way you want to put it. Yep. So,
So another cool thing during the process of Jim putting this album together, so another time where he reached out to me and said, "Oh, I got some great news to tell you. I've got a guy who's going to appear on my album that's going to blow your mind." And I remember at first you couldn't tell me who it was.
Yeah.
And he goes, "I'll be able to tell you soon."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, cool." So, and that guy, of course, was
Mr. Brett Garsed.
Yep.
Yes, a very famous guitar player and one of my personal mental mentors, I call it in music. He just has a beautiful sound, and man, the guy can play the shit out of a guitar. He just
chops to die for. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I had been in touch with Brett since about 2005. I actually, not to touch on anything dark here or anything like that, but I got very sick back in 2004. And it took me out of the music business completely for a little while. I couldn't even remember how to play a G chord. That's how bad it was. And what helped me recover was someone introduced me to Brett's solo music. And for whatever reason, it's the tone, the notes, the way he plays, and the way he writes beautiful music, guitar music, it struck a bell in me. And it lasted that way for about 6 months or so. And all of a sudden, one day, man, I just got this vibe in me, and it literally helped me through my recovery process of being sick. And I kid you not, that's a true story. And I sent him an email about it, never expecting to get a return email, from someone like Brett. Brett's big, he's out there. And I got an email returned within 6 hours.
Wow. From
Australia. So, and he was very kind. He sent me a large paragraph up. Grab it sometime, print it out. A copy of a very nice email that he emailed back to me, and thanking me for listening to his music. And him and I have been like internet friends, and slight business dealings here and there. I've done some things with him, getting from him and everything over the years. And I'd always dreamed about having somebody like that playing on one of my tunes. So I just sent him an email one morning while I'm sitting here, and lo and behold, 8 hours later, I think 8-9 hours later or something, bling, there it comes up, right? And it says Brett Garsed on it. Open it up, and I expected to probably get turned down. I know Brett's busy, and but rather than seeing that, I saw, "Hey mate, how's it going? Been a long time. Send the track." That's what I said. Send the track. So that's what I did. Sent the track, and the rest is history with that. And that song is "Eyes in a Faraway Dream," and has like a. Brett opens up with a gorgeous slide work. I mean, he's well known for his slide work, and it has a bluesy, almost country. I categorize this song. People ask me about that bought the album. They're like, it's kind of mellow, and I'm like, it is kind of mellow. I said, but if you listen to the song carefully, there's crunch guitars going on all over in the background in the song, and my melody line that I do in the song between Brett's solo work is also crunched out to the max. So it is a little mellow for what some of the other things I did.
It's kind of like a meeting of different styles,
right?
Sort of, and textures. Yeah.
You know what I like to call it is the ballad on the album. Yeah. Is the rock ballad on the album. Everybody has a ballad on their album, so that's mine. And I wrote it that way, and I left plenty of space in there for Brett to exhaust all of his solo talents, man, as much as he could. And he went well over a minute for me in the main solo, and that starts at about 2 minutes in the song, 2 minutes 10. And at the beginning, it's some beautiful slide work, which that was a bonus, by the way. I wasn't expecting it. I'll never forget. 2 weeks later, I ended up getting an email back from Brett. It was like 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I saw the attachment, and I said, "Oh boy."
You hooked me up.
I cranked it right up, and I opened the attachment up, man, and there was his solo. He's like, it just had a big wink on it, like a a big winking eye on in his email, and it just said, "Sometimes I get it right the first time. If not, just hit me back, mate." So I played it, and I was just blown away. That's all I'm going to say. What you hear on the album is Brett's first 2 takes and only recordings on that album. And
I love that, but I wouldn't expect any less.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he's just phenomenal, man. He's one of my favorite players. Most toneful, and he just rips ass when he needs to.
See, all that stuff you got to look forward to on Red Hot Legato.
Yes, there's a lot of good stuff. Yeah, man. I mean, there's all kinds of good stuff.
You got rock, you got some jazz fusion on there, you got a little bit of progressive rock, got some metallic stuff going on. It's a little bit of everything. Not what you'd expect from Lion Music, but it's a good thing. And I think you'll see what a great, well-rounded player that Jim really is, not just from instrumental-wise, but also compositional skills as well. So, Jim, to kind of take us out here, what's on the immediate future for you? Projects coming up, what do you see the next 6 months to a year in the life of Jim Ledford?
Okay, well, immediately right now, literally tomorrow, I have a quick project I have to finish. I was approached a week after the album was released by someone that's doing a short film in Manhattan, and hadn't seen him in a long time, and he heard about the album coming out and everything, and so he got into that, and he sent me a message and asked me if he could use some of the songs from my album on his new film. So that's number one. But then as an add-in on that, he asked me if I would do the underscore for the entire film as well, which would be kind of the freaky Jimmy Page kind of work that he did on Death Wish 3 in the background. So I'm going to be recording all of that tomorrow, actually, right here tomorrow. And I'll finish off all that work for him then. And then that goes into a challenge competition, which starts in Manhattan for that film. And from there, it goes all over the world. So, again, some of Red Legato is going to be heard all over the place. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing to push music out in different directions. And I figured it would, open some doors for me in that market as well, which I'm always open to. I used to do some of that back in the 1990s. So, and going forward, I have a classical album that I'm going to be doing one cut for Lars from Lion Music going into the new year, and that's going to be for the Haydn series, classical composer compilation series. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to get into my old Ingve groove for some of that because it is what it is. Yeah. So I'll do that, and then beyond that, there's also been some additional talk which I privied Pete to, but I won't publicly privy anyone to yet until it's all on papers between everybody. But I can say it. I'm just not going to spill the total beans. But think international band. That's all.
More to come.
More to come.
More to come. But in the meantime, head on over to Amazon, head on over to CD Baby. Where else is the new album?
Spotify, iTunes. It's all over the place.
All over the place. So go buy it, go stream it, do whatever you do. CDs might be coming next year, right? Yeah. Is that kind of where we're at with that? So, and in the meantime, Jim, your website URL is?
Yes, my personal main website is jimledford.net.
Jimledford.net. He's on Facebook as well, so you can go find him there.
Yeah.
So, otherwise, any other last minute things you want to say to the?
I just want to thank everybody who's already been involved with this whole kickoff process. I can't thank you enough, Pete. Seriously,
very well.
I really can't. I mean, he's kicked the ball off from me here and kind of sort of taken me out of a musician's dark hole and put it forward for me again. So I can't thank him enough. And then following suit with everybody else, man. Lars, it's great working with him, and it looks like we're going to be working together on some stuff in the future. So, I'm happy. And
Lars and his crew are a great bunch of guys. We've been working with Lion Music for a long, long time.
Yeah, man, they're totally cool people. Absolutely. And I want to thank everybody who has supported my career all these years. I've been around a long time doing this, most of you know, and I can't thank you all enough. I just from the bottom of my heart. I mean, I'm very grateful to everyone, and I mean. Shout
out to Metal Vicky over there.
Metal Vicky, that's right.
Sonic Asylum Radio.
Sonic Asylum Radio, that's right. Yeah.
My friend Vicky.
That's coming up too, by the way. Vicky and I have been in a conversation. No date yet, but going to be taking Vicky out to some dinner and doing a live show with her.
Cool.
Yep. So
round number 2 on coming. Sonic Asylum. There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Again, Jim, thanks a lot for coming by. Actually, thanks for having me here. I actually came by to you today.
Thanks for making the trek.
So for Jim Ledford, again, check him out on Lion Music, Red Hot Legato, I am Pete Pardo. We'll be joining you again very, very soon with some more rants and some more What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility, new releases. Seems like we've been coming at you guys nonstop over the last couple of weeks. It's end of the year mania here. So in the meantime, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and of course, we're here on the mighty YouTube. So we'll see you next time, guys. Take care. My brother. Good to see you. Take care.